Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. Today, I am once again joined by one of my favorite writers, probably one of yours as well, the Eisner Award-winning writer of, here we go, you ready for this? Batman, Mr. Miracle, The Vision, The Sheriff of Babylon, Supergirl, Human Target, currently writing Wonder Woman, Jenny Sparks, Elmire. I was on such a roll.
Animal Pound.
Yes,
Hell
Animal
of a
Pound.
Winter.
That's it. I've never had to say it out loud. So now you beat me to it. And then the upcoming Black Canary Best of the Best. Tom King, how are you?
An absolute pleasure to be back. Thank you for inviting me back. I greatly appreciate it, man. I love your stuff, and it's an honor to be here.
I am always excited to have you back. It's been a long time.
It's been too long.
The last was our deep dive on One Bad Day with Mitch.
Ooh,
which is
a ways ago.
Yeah, it's only like you've done 9,000 books since then.
Now, you call me Eisner winning. I was like, I just lost to Eisner. I feel like I should be Eisner losing right now.
I didn't want to rub it in.
I think I'm gonna set a record this year. I'm not sure. Someone should look this up. I think to lose. I lost. It takes. I'm gonna lose an Eisner. I'm gonna lose. I got nominated for a Harvey for Love Everlasting for Best Series. I'm gonna lose that. And then I got nominated for a Ringo for Animal Pound, which I will also lose. So I believe I will be the first writer who will lose all three awards in the same year.
Is Ringo the one that does that's near us, isn't it?
It's in Baltimore. Yeah. Fun award show.
Yeah. Do any of them have open bars, or you're just like cold turkey in the losses?
You can get drinks at San Diego. I've never been. I have a Harvey. I won a Harvey once, but I've never been to the Harvey. So this will be my first time attending.
Where do the Harveys at?
They're in New York.
Oh, fancy.
The Harveys used to be in Baltimore, then moved to New York, and so then now Baltimore has the Ringos. It's very complicated. So they're the three awards that I will lose this year. But I appreciate it's nice being nominated for best book for three different books. So I like that. Yeah, at least I don't know what I'm writing that's a week.
Yeah, that's a big loss. Good for you.
That's good. Number one loser in comics, Tom King is here today. Yes.
Well, I have been overjoyed because I've been reading a ton of your stuff this week, just preparing. And I read another interview.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Where you talked about Black Canary and you talked about wrestling. Since the last time I think we spoke, I've become a big wrestling person.
Awesome. Very cool. I'm ready. I was just at a live match, so I'm in the know.
You got to see Cody Rhodes. I got
to see
jealous.
Cody Rhodes. I got to sing the song. Whoa, I did the whole thing.
Cody Rhodes. I don't know the real words.
My son knows all the words, and he was yelling them out.
Is your son got into wrestling completely separate from you?
Yes. No, my children are terrible because my oldest loves wrestling. That's like his super nerd. He's into the history of it. He can tell you every wrestler, their background, their history, whoever's headlined for the last like 50 years of every match. He loves it. That's where sort of he lives. And I'm like, these are two people in costume fighting. Just be into superheroes.
There is such a crossover too. It's like,
and there's such a crossover. Yeah. He does read comics, but he's just not into them like I was. And then my middle child was my daughter. She's super into like young adult books. Like she loves books like about like fairy worlds and kings and princesses and all that stuff, and sort of the sort of Hunger Games books that came out of that. And I was like, well, this is just, these are basically superheroes, just like, and she's like, no, this is what, and then my youngest is into Pokemon, which is again, just people with fun names fighting. Like they all have their separate nerds. It's separate from the nerd that, first of all, I own all the comics, so it would be free. Like I had to pay for Pokemon cards. Come and read comics. But no, all three of them are into nerds that are so close, but not quite.
Yeah. Wrestling is the closest, comics. I think, out of the three. Now,
yes, wrestling's very close, and I enjoy it. I've enjoyed getting into wrestling.
I guess it would kind of be hard to be like a super comic nerd when your dad is Tom King. No offense to you. I think it's just like imagine your poor son like having to go on like Twitter or something and be like, oh, I really like this book, and then having to deal with that. Like wrestling's a good bet.
No, that's true. It keeps them a little bit at a distance, but they love newspaper comics and they love Archie. It's ended up being that Archie. My kids are all super into Archie, so that's
interesting.
But yeah, my oldest, who's now 15, is interesting. And when I was a kid and I was into comics, my parents were like, "That is super weird, and we do not support it at all." So I was very determined to not do that. So I was like, I don't really understand what wrestling is, but I want to get into it and see what you're, so that we can bond over and we can love and we can. And so I watched it. I watched a lot of documentaries. I sit with him and watch all the big events, and he explains it to me, and it's fucking awesome. And now I love it too. So yeah, it's great.
And then my biggest deterrent from ever getting into wrestling was my name, McMahon. Like you grow up and kids are like, do you know Vince? And it's like, no, dude. Like, do you think I would be here if I was like his son? Come on. So like,
I get a lot of people's like, are you Stephen King's son? I was like, he has a very famous son who's a writer who's not me.
Yeah, he also writes comics, but he's not me. So he's into WWE. Does he watch the other stuff, or is he straight WWE?
He'll watch AEW, not as religiously as WWE. I think during the end of the Vince McMahon era, he was getting harder into AEW, but ever since Triple H took over, he really likes this new era. And so he's been floating way back into WWE. He wasn't a fan of what Vince was doing, so he separated. But now he feels
a lot of people weren't.
Yeah. So now, well, on multiple levels.
Yeah. So, not a very popular guy.
Since Triple H took over, he's all in. That's definitely number one.
Who is his superstar, and who is your superstar?
He likes Drew McIntyre as his current favorite. He's a big McIntyre fan. I'm like fucking. I like the vanilla stuff. I feel bad. Like I really like Roman Reigns. I was like, man, he just looks like a superhero. And then he got knocked out. And now I really like Cody Rhodes. I love Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens are my two favorites. And I got to see them fight together.
Kevin's great.
I like Cody because I watched his doc. I love that Cody was screwed over by WWE and he said fuck it and walked away and started doing matches with 100. He went from being, he's the son of a superstar, obviously.
Yeah.
And then he went to little stadiums where he was in front of 100 people, and then he worked his way back up, founded his own company, and then came. I don't know. It's just such a goddamn compelling story that he has. It's
such a good story. And Cody's one of my favorites too, but because of that, understanding what he's done to get that belt, it's you have to finish the story. That was my fiance was so annoyed how many times I said that, but it was it's just cool to see this storytelling and all of that. Now,
and then he gets the pec injury and he gets it taken away from him, and oh my god,
so cool when he's fighting with
it.
Yeah. It was like a battle damaged Superman. You're like,
it was like a battle damaged
fighting. You're gonna die.
And let's face it, man, he's got a fucking catchy entrance song. I'm sorry.
He does.
It gets me hyped.
And he looks like Homelander. So he's really got all the things covered.
Yeah, no, when I was there, I bought an American Nightmare shirt and I bought a KO shirt. Those were the two shirts I bought.
That's great.
I like Kevin Owens because he doesn't look like a fucking wrestler. Everyone else is stacked and carved, but he does all the moves, man.
Yeah.
And he hits it. And I love his cannonball move on the corner. Yes. I don't know why. It reminds me of Puck when I was a kid reading Alpha Play.
It is miraculous what some of those people can do. There's one of the biggest wrestling schools on earth is near here. And I got to go watch because they were doing a documentary show, and watching some of these people flip over those ropes, you can't even believe they're human. It's just, something else. But I always start interviews off with the pretty big question with my sandwiches. No. But this one, I'm very excited to ask.
I'm ready with whatever sandwich.
Oh no, it's WWE now.
Oh, okay, okay.
What would be your entrance song?
Oh, damn, man, that's a deep cut. What would be my entrance song? I'm gonna go with something from my childhood. My parents were hippies, so I'm gonna go with "The Boxer" by Simon and Garfunkel. And the clearing stands a boxer and a fighter by his name, and on his face he carries a reminder of every scar that laid him there and cut him until he cried out in his anger and his shame, I'm leaving, but the fighter still remains. That's fucking badass, man. I'm leaving, but the fighter still remains.
Simon and Garfunkel, fucking incredible.
First folk rock entry in entrance music.
Yeah. Big Simon and Garfunkel guy over here. So this book, the Black Canary, Best of the Best, you're doing with Ryan Sook. What was so I've read a little bit about it. The inception of you and a couple of other writers talking about a tournament.
Yeah.
Is it what curved this more into the square, like putting them into a ring?
It was a combination of everything we just talked about. Where, it was this kind of famous retreat. It was me and Becky Cloonan, Scott Snyder. I think Josh Williamson was there. I think Steve Orlando was there. It was like all the sort of young guns that were coming up through Mark Doyle, who was like the Batman editor. I was coming in through Grayson. And we were trying to plan the next Batman event, which seemed crazy to me at the time because I was like, I can't believe I'm in the planning of a Batman event. And the idea was we were doing this thing called Night Fight, Night with a K, where all the Batman superheroes had to fight each other for some reason in a tournament style to see who would win. And we were all kind of pitching who would actually win this fight. And it was, what I most remember, I think most people, is that Scott was there. Scott was wearing Batman at the time. And he was insistent that Batman would win the fight. He was just like, he was not hearing any other opinion. And you would be like, I think Nightwing would win. And Scott's like, yeah, Nightwing would win. Then he'd pull off his mask and it would be Batman. And it became this famous moment where we always because it never happened, or I was like, when are we doing Night Fight? We got to do Night Fight.
It's such a good name over everything.
And then that became, and one of the things that came up in that discussion was that someone raised, I can't remember who it was, that Black Canary was known as the second greatest fighter, hand-to-hand fighter. Mm-hmm. Not in terms of power, but just in terms of like MMA in the ring. Mm. And I remember thinking, that's so weird to be the second best. It's like Mr. Terrific being the third smartest man in the DC universe. Like who's the and they said Lady Shiva was the first best, and that's what always stuck with me. It's like, those are the two best hand-to-hand. It's not who you would think. You think Batman, you think Nightwing, or you think Damian, but those are the two best. Regardless of gender, they're the top hand-to-hand combat. Mm-hmm. And so when I started getting into wrestling with my son, and I was just amazed by how much storytelling could be told within a 4-corner ring, and that they had done 80 years of storytelling. That's as good as anything we can do in comics. In the wrestling ring, I was like, I want to stupid writer instinct, but I want to try it. I want to do something cool. And so I was like, well, I want to do a wrestling. I was like, what would be the highest stake wrestling? And I was like, well, the best hand-to-hand combat against the challenger, the second best, that's Cody versus Roman. That's the top of the heap. So I put them in, and then I started running with the idea.
I love that. And Lady Shiva herself has been around forever.
Yes.
Typically we see her in stories where it's she's the best fighter. Somebody has to beat her to show that.
Yeah.
How have you kind of characterized her in your story so she's not just like a one-dimensional villain?
I wouldn't say she has because this is a deep dive into Black Canary. So I wouldn't say, I'm not going to say I gave her an incredible background where she's not a one-dimensional, but her main thing here is her competitiveness, because to be number one, you have to be a little insane. And you have to have dedicated your life. I mean, we just saw the Olympics. Those to get the gold instead of the silver means your life is insane and your whole life is about that 1 second that separates you. So it was bringing out that part of her, that like never quit part of her, that like always on it, what it means to be dominant, to be the best, and to in the entire, it was focusing on that aspect, her competitiveness, her drive, her endless. But I mean, I won't lie. I mean, she's the heel, and Black Canary's the face. Like, I'm playing with tropes. I'm playing with tropes because I love tropes. You know, when someone gets slammed into the stairs, it's Shiva slamming Canary into the stairs. You know, so she's definitely the heel in this match. Not for any, you know, but that's not to say, you know, like I said, like. The first Cody Roman match, I was all over Roman. I love a good heel. I love, like, I mean, the bloodline stuff they're doing right now, man. I'm just digging it. It's like you can root hard for a heel in this country. So but that's what it is. Yeah,
I love a heel. I'm a big heel guy. But
yeah,
I'm very excited to hear you talk wrestling terms. Something that I've always kind of thought about in the dynamics of being that I write about all of these things of superheroes and wrestlers is that there is this kind of double life. You have the kayfabe and then you have the actual people. Like Cody Rhodes isn't Cody Rhodes outside of the ring.
Yeah.
How is that a perspective you have brought into this book? Like Black Canary isn't Black Canary. She's Dinah. What is that for you when you're writing the story?
Yeah, I mean, that's at the heart of the whole story, of who Black Canary is. And we play with a lot of motifs of her wearing her wigs, which I always thought was sort of fascinating, that she's sort of a brunette who wears a blonde wig, and the idea that she sort of puts on this different personality when she becomes Black Canary, and that it's a personality that her mother put on before her. So she's adopting a personality. Yeah, so that is very much a part of like who she is when she's not in the ring versus who she is when she is in the ring. Is the whole core of the book. I mean, the book is I stole from a Kevin Costner movie where he's pitching a perfect game and sort of flashback to his life as he's pitching in it. So in this idea, but the idea is the whole heart of this 6-issue series is the 6 rounds of this fight. So the whole thing centers on the fight. Each issue is 1 round, and as these two people are fighting, you see flashbacks, which will explain sort of why Black Canary is in a wrestling match in front of a billion people who are watching. You know, why would a superhero agree to do that? And you also see flashbacks of sort of how she got to this point in her life, how she became the second best combat. And it's a lot about her relationship with her mother, because she goes back to her mother to sort of start training. Her mother sort of training. So as she fights, as she sort of goes forward and through each round, she's flashing back to explain sort of the emotional content that got her there. So it's all about, just like wrestling is, it's about the backstory flooding into the ring story to always heighten the stakes as we keep going forward.
She is Cody Rhodes. It's all like dusty, like you're wow.
There are some parallels. She's definitely finishing the story.
That's awesome. That's even more exciting to think that. Yeah. So,
but she never charges her hands like that, though. She never does the move.
The charge or there's so many moves that are just like kind of silly, like the wrestlers do, but they work. Now,
they work.
Is there? I don't want to say focus on relationships, but her mother and her. You, in your work, have a lot of kind of breakdowns of interpersonal relationships. Like it's a very big part of your catalog. You've got things like the very serious, nuanced relationship between Batman and Catwoman, things like that. I'm not sure you have delved on the page with a mother and daughter relationship yet. Is this the first time? Like to the focus?
I believe so. Yes. I mean, this was written quite some time ago, but I mean, Sook and I have been working on this for 3-4 years. So, I mean, I've dealt with some of it in Wonder Woman, but that was like 2 or 3 years after it. Yeah. And not that much in Wonder Woman. Yeah. So this, at the time I wrote this was my first time sort of delving into the mother-daughter relationship. And I have a daughter and I have a wife, and I watch that relationship as it evolves. My daughter's now 14, from infancy through teenage years, and sort of both mothers and daughters. It's it's an interesting thing because it's like they idealize each other and yet they compete against each other. They love each other stronger than any two people in the world, and then they despise each other stronger than two people in the world. And catching all that dynamic and sort of the two Dinahs is what I really wanted from this book. And to me, at least, it's fun to read because I wrote it a while back, so I get to read it. I like it. I think I did it. My favorite parts about the book is the dynamic between the mother and the daughter, because I think it works well.
Yeah,
all that stuff is in there. They don't feel cookie cutter. They express like deep emotions and contradict themselves and express other emotions, which to me is what a mother-daughter relationship about is. It's ask any mother about a daughter, any daughter about her mother. The first thing they'll say is it's complicated, and this is a complicated relationship.
With you building out these kind of like deep, complicated relationships with characters, and sometimes we don't, us as readers and as fans, like know this stuff has existed, but we may have not gotten to see it on page in clear wording. And as comics have kind of progressed, we've gotten more nuanced stories like that. When you are building a conflict between two characters that isn't a fight or something like that, that's more of like a personal, emotional based thing, where do you start on that writing? Like, how do you kind of flesh that out at the beginning to see how these characters are going to interact and things like that in your writing?
Well, I think you nailed it with the first part of your questions. It's like, I think everybody out there who's a big Black Canary fan knows that she had a complicated relationship with her mother and just assumes a lot of sort of scenes have happened, scenes of like what it was like when Dinah was a kid and watched her, scenes of what the transition was like when she's older, scenes of what it's like now. But those scenes haven't been portrayed in comics. They're almost like these background images we have, this sort of fan fiction we have in our head. And what we mostly see in comics is, occasionally they like radio each other while one's in a plane fighting Mongols. So I just try to write the scenes that we all have in our heads. I feel like this story has already been told, but nobody's just put it down on paper. So that's always what I'm aiming for that kind of purity.
I don't want you to spoil anything, but are there other characters that have had not Green Arrow? I don't. Ollie, whatever. Other characters like holy shit! I just blanked on one of the biggest, Wildcat. People who are skilled fighters and we know have like had relationships with this kind of stuff. Are you trying to incorporate those characters into this world, your 6-issue world, or is it you're trying to focus in on these main characters?
Green Arrow is in it. Wildcat is in it. None of them are the stars. The focus is on Black Canary, and the focus is on Dinah and Lady Shiva, and it's about the mother and the daughter. They're the ones who are on every page. But I would say, there are guest star moments from Wildcat and Green Arrow, and there's a big villain if you read the first issue that's revealed at the end, and he plays a role as well. So there are other minor characters, but the focus is just those two. It's about a mother and a daughter, and it's about a fight.
Like that, and
it's fucking beautiful. Like I said, I wrote this years ago. The reason Sook got, bless him, just decide he wanted to draw every page, and once he started, he didn't stop. And so when you have a legend like Ryan Sook, a guy who sort of changed the game in comics, saying he wants to draw every page, you give him the time, you give him the space, and you watch him cook, and he fucking cooked. It is. I cannot wait to. I'll send you the first issue as soon as they send it to me. I'm so excited
to see it.
And then I'll try to send you the second one because I think that's coming out soon. Because he's way ahead. So you're going to get 6 issues of. I know, like his Legion of Superheroes was super cool, but you didn't get a ton of them that were all his.
Yeah.
So in this comic, you're getting 6 issues. Every single page is Ryan Sook. 6 issues, 28 pages, every single page. There's no fill-ins, nothing.
Is this something that was sitting on a shelf at DC for that long, or is it something that he has just gotten to work on for this that amount of time?
DC was nice. I gave him all 6 scripts. Before he even started, he had all 6 scripts, and they just said, "Take your time, do your thing. You do this. You do this in your own time, so you can make it. So you can get it done." And they've been very patient, and and very kind, and being patient, and letting and letting a maestro do his best stuff. And that makes for the best of comics. And having been through this before with, someone like, Bilquist on Supergirl or Mitch on One Bad Day, you're better off at the end of the day waiting a little while and getting a book that looks super good.
Yeah. Right. Sook is so fucking good. There's like so many iconic like images. The Nightwing cover. The dynamics. He's just such a beautiful artist.
To me, it's all about that X Factor run when he just took X Factor, this weird noir plays with Peter David. That's crazy. I
think that's what got me into X-Men, because my brother convinced me that I needed to read that, and I fell in love with Guido.
Yeah, Guido was amazing. Strongman, absolutely.
He's so fucking. He's
so cool. And how Sook drew it, man. It's awesome.
He's so. I love. That's such a good run. God.
Holds up too. I read it recently. It's weird and mysterious, and you can't believe this was a mainstream comic aimed for kids and whatever it was, 1998 or whatever.
It's a very weird book, like a very weird book, like that still, as you said, holds up because it's like got so much going on.
Yeah.
Let's talk now. With this, what has been the once it got out into the public, like when people were seeing it, what was something that surprised you about the feedback you saw from the series?
I mean, people were excited. People were over the top. I was a little surprised at how many Black Canary fans there were out there. Having just done a Jenny Sparks book and seeing the difference, like a Jenny Sparks has arguably a more prominent book and sort of the authority than I would think Black Canary has, but just tons and tons and tons. There's a Black Canary army. So that surprised me to see how popular a character she was. I mean, I knew, but I didn't know. I was super happy. I mean, I was super happy with that. I mean, I was like, good. This is a book. I'm super, these days I'm really busy because I'm in Hollywood doing all this crap, but I told DC, I was like, I want to push the as much as I can out of this book. I want to push because I think this could be something cool and something big.
And I didn't even realize it was 6 rounds, 6-ish. Like, I love a very focused story, and I'm very excited that Canary is getting one of those. And we'll talk about Canary a little bit later again, because she does pop up in some of your Wonder Woman stuff that I am just so good, because I'm a very big Damien fan. So we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
I think it's such a fun thing. Now, you mentioned Jenny Sparks. I don't have much background with the Authority. What?
Not many people do. I'm finding out.
Yeah. And like that and Legion are like my 2 areas of I have no idea what's going on. Maybe a little while.
Which is crazy because the Authority, generally speaking, at least among comic book professionals, we consider the Authority to be one of those books that changed the game, because Brian Hitch sort of invented widescreen comics in the Authority, which sort of changed how everyone wrote comics. So in terms of like comic book history, the Authority is sort of a big marker for a lot of people.
When did it start? I didn't.
It's like late 90s.
Oh, again, I didn't start. Like I read all of Morrison's JLA to like that's what really got me into comics, but I didn't start reading weekly until issue 3 of Final Crisis, which again, a very weird place to start.
that is the weirdest of all places.
Being dropped into a Morrison just years building mindfuck, and I was like, what? Why do people have
Why
tusks?
Is Superman singing?
Yeah. Oh my, that still sits with me today. But like there was like people with tusks and shit. I was like, all right, cool. So the Authority kind of missed me. What made, I guess, other than the looming of them, what about her as a character made you want to explore her in a series?
How did this start? I had a different pitch for Green Lanterns where I had sort of this idea of well, gosh, I don't want to give away the idea because I think it's still good, but I had the idea of sort of who watches the Watchmen kind of thing in the DC universe. Like who is the internal affairs for superheroes when superheroes go bad? Like what do they do? It can't be Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman because they are superheroes. It has to be someone slightly outside. And that was the base. I kind of had that kind of vague idea for an idea of like, yeah, like an internal affairs for superheroes. And then I was working with an editor who was at Wildstorm and had worked on all that stuff. And they announced that, the Authority would be part of,
The big
DC
picture.
Studios, the big picture. And the combination of those two factors, I was like, I started talking with the editor and they're like, what if Jenny Sparks was sort of this internal affairs person? And I knew Authority. I was a big fan of the book. I like Jenny Sparks, like her portrayal in that book. I think she's interesting. And then I started thinking about her and sort of how to make her relevant, how to make her cool. And what interested me about her was that she's the spirit of the 20th century. That's like that's her nickname. And it's so much so that so for people who don't know, Jenny Sparks was born on the first day of the 20th century and then died on the last day of the 20th century at the end of the first volume of Authority. So she's dead. And the idea that she represents the 20th century and is currently dead, that sparked something in me because I'm old enough to have been there at the end of the 20th century. And there was an idea at the end that we were sort of done with that century, that we had sort of gotten rid of it. It's bizarre to think of it now, but like when Clinton was president, there's like, we just thought, okay, communism is defeated. The world is going into a better place. Something called soft power was going to make everything cool. And we genuinely just thought like the world wasn't perfect. We knew like there were still injustices, but it seemed like history had an arc and it was going up and all we had to do was ride this roller coaster. It was perfectly fine. And we'd never drop again. And that was the end of
Curb Your Enthusiasm theme starts playing.
Yeah. And then 9/11 hits and suddenly we're like, oh, all those, and the 20th century was a fucking rough century. We had World War I, we had World War II, we had Vietnam, we had nuclear. And like all of those sort of old ghosts were like, no, history's not done with you yet, man. But like progress isn't what you think. There are forces against that. There's a counter reformation. And so then I was like, oh, Jenny Sparks represents the 20th century, and the 20th century is not done with us. Then she's not done being alive. Like the horrors that she represents, the horrors of the Holocaust, the horrors of everything, the horrors of the trenches. All that stuff is still with us and still driving us forward. So then I had this idea of doing a book where we sort of explored that idea of what it means that the 20th century never went away, that we never sort of achieved that peace that we thought we did, so that she can't die because she's still with us. And that's what the book became about, this sort of idea of how the events today are still haunting us. Yeah. The events of yesterday are still haunting us today. That's better.
I kind of understood that a little bit, the way you've explained it, like I get her now. But there's something about her character that I love, and I need to make this public announcement. I do not support smoking cigarettes.
Neither do I.
But it does look fucking cool in a comic, on TV. And it's not something we see much anymore because companies like Mickey and all the other ones kind of put a kibosh on that. You can't do smoking in Marvel movies. You can't do things like that. Is the smoking for her character a little bit symbolic of what the world used to be? Like, for you, why keep her smoking?
I mean, it's a few things. I mean, I think she's like Constantine, where she's one of those characters who's defined by the cigarette in her mouth. So you can't sort of write Jenny Sparks without smoking. I've written a lot of tobacco use. I'm not a smoker myself. I just watch a lot of old movies where people are smoking. I generally try to put in my books that smoking kills you and gives you cancer. So I do put that in there.
Yeah.
But it's just a great visual metaphor. If you're having two people talk, it just gives you something to do, where instead of just looking at a person standing there talking, so it's visual. But yes, I think the idea is exactly what you said. She's from a previous century where smoking was universal. So there's that part of it. And the second part of it is she's a woman who I said died and came back to life. And the fact that she's like, part of her problem is she can't die. The 20th century can't die. And so in that sense, she's not afraid of smoking. She's not afraid of cancer. She's just like, nothing can kill me, so why not just smoke? So it's part of that metaphor of her being like, nothing can kill me, so I might as well just smoke all day long. So that's part of it. It's a suicide wish that won't come true.
I think I got to go back and read some more of her because she's just cool.
And she's very cool and very fun, right? Because she doesn't give a fuck about anyone. She doesn't take anyone. She is unimpressed by anyone. And this is all stuff that's true to her character. I didn't make any of this stuff up. That's who she is. But she has a heart in the right place where she sort of has an eye on justice. She just doesn't. She doesn't give a fuck about your little whining and complaining. Yeah, she's get shit done. That's her. So that's Jenny Sparks.
I was reading the first issue, and she's unlike a lot of your protagonists. Again, not to harken back to Batman too much. Like Batman, Mr. Mirror, we just deal with dudes with depression. It's just like
I've done a lot of depression.
It's fine. Everyone's going through it. It's between you and your therapist. But she's like so.
I've done some tougher dudes too. So.
Yeah, no, listen, you got me because of the sad ones. So
thanks. I appreciate it.
Jenny's a much more aggressive character. How do you write how do you write that without making her, how do you balance being forward without being unlikable? If that makes sense. And like characters in general, not just Jenny.
I mean, you got to project confidence, and you always got to. I mean, I think the simplest way to answer that question is always punch up, never punch down. Like that's like the simple rule. Like if she's taking the air out of a lot of people, make sure she's taking the air out of people who deserve it. She make sure she's never doing it to belittle anyone or to make anyone feel bad or anything like that. That her attitude is always. Because to me, Jenny Sparks is about equality. That attitude that she has is about equality. It's about seeing every single person is on her level, and if you're putting on airs, she's gonna bring you down, and if you're too far down, she's gonna bring you up. So that's how I think of Jenny Sparks.
I like
she's
that.
Just, and that's how you write that. You make sure they have a twisted tongue. Yes, they're cutting, but they're never using it. I mean, it's just like writing Superman, man. You never have Superman punching, the wrong people in the face. I mean, if as long as you haven't punching the right people, he's headed in the right direction. That's the same with Jenny Sparks.
There is one panel in the issue that caught my eye specifically with her in England with Big Ben and all that, and it says, "Jenny, this is the doctor." Is that a reference to a DC character, or is that a reference to the Doctor?
That's a reference to someone in the Authority whose name is the Doctor, who is famously, I think it was the writer of the Authority's take on Doctor Who. It was a parody.
It was a stand-up.
Yes.
Maybe I got to go back and read some Authority. Huh. Oh, I guess I do.
It's only 18 issues. It's a pretty short run, and there's a lot of pictures, not a lot of words, so it goes fast.
Perfect. That's the best for me. Yeah, and there's kind of the whole movie thing, and it being the next big thing. Another thing in that issue that I am fascinated by is your portrayal of Captain Atom.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a depressed demeanor. He's just kind of disillusioned. And it might be something you're going to explore in the series, but how do you approach writing a character who's just kind of wandering? Like, what is it, a stream of consciousness that you're trying to go for there? Like, how did you approach this Captain Atom?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a cracked person. He's not in his right mind. So I tried to kind of channel that idea of a mind that doesn't stay put, that kind of wanders all over. He has reasons to crack. Captain Atom has a fairly horrific origin story where he was sort of framed for a crime, and then to get out of jail, he volunteered to have a nuclear bomb dropped on him while he was in an alien plane, and then the alien plane, no piggy, and then the alien plane melted on him, burning his flesh. At which point he went unconscious and woke up 30 years later with his and was now a superhero, but his family rejected him, didn't want him anymore, and didn't care about his service. And yet somehow all of that became kind of generic army guy. He's mostly portrayed. I mean, he also famously became a huge villain during Armageddon in 2001. So he's had some moments of No, he was supposed to become. So sorry, I should say. Then he was supposed to become the big villain. Then the internet, the pre-internet leaked it, and they switched to Hawk at the last second. So he actually didn't become
so weird.
It was one of the weirdest mystery changes. So he has reason to be a little dismayed with life, but also he has a second level to him, is that he's obviously the basis for Dr. Manhattan. So that part of it is sort of what I'm playing into, this idea that like a guy who's a soldier could be a god, because we all know sort of Dr. Manhattan's kind of almost like the god of the Watchmen universe. And so he lives somewhere between sort of the typical Captain Atom, yes or no sir soldier portrayal you get in a Justice League comic, and the, Dr. Manhattan, someone who is kind of disconnected from content. He's a man who wants to be a god. And that's a crazy thing to be. And he takes 5 people hostage, and this series is about how Jenny sort of deals with it. And it's a completely insane thing to do. He has the power of a god, and he decides to take 5 random people hostage and say, I will release these hostages if you declare that I am God. Which is, again, not a sane thing to do, but that's what Jenny has to deal with.
It's a big
She's
move.
internal. Like I said, she's internal affairs. Yeah, it's a big move. And he wants a sandwich.
So we've gotten through Jenny. Now, I
was going too slow. I gotta go faster. Too many things working.
No, it's okay. We haven't gotten to talk for a while. Now, the Penguin, fucking killer. But there's something about the first issue that has stuck with me since I read it. You play a lot with perspective of different people viewing this character. Yeah. Is that something as a writer you were seeing? Like if you're writing Damian talking to Batman, are you taking their perspective into mind? Because it's so interesting to see how you broke down Penguin into such a complicated man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking for different ways to tell a story, not to give up the thrilling for how to tell it, but I'm always looking to make how I tell it symbolic of what the action is. And with Penguin, his main thing is that like everyone had an opinion on him, but nobody kind of understood him. And so I reflected in this thing where I was like, I'm going to have narration in this book. I'm going to use captions. Sometimes I use captions like in Vision, and sometimes I don't. Like I never used captions in Batman. But typically 90% of comics captions are first person narratives of your main character. You'll open up a Nightwing comic and you'll be like, how did I get in this situation? I can't believe I just swung in here. But I was like, in this one, I'm going to do captions, and every single person is going to have captions except Penguin. So you see from a waiter who waits on him to Batman, to the Joker, to his children, you can get inside every single person's mind except Penguin. So for the entirety of the book, except the last 2 pages, you hear you just see 1,000 different reflections of who this person could be, because he's playing every side against the other, and you never see what's in his mind. You never see his plan, and that's a reflection of who Penguin is, because his greatest power is that everybody thinks about him the way he isn't, and he uses that to manipulate them. Everyone thinks he's a little whiny fool, and he's in fact a horrible, manipulative genius.
I think it's probably my favorite first issue from any series you've done, because it is, and the caption.
You're not the first person to say that to it. It's very interesting. But yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
It is, again, the perspective thing is so, and the caption thing I didn't even realize until you said it. It's just so interesting to see this man from other people's eyes, and we don't get to see that often, because again, the captions are them. So thank you for indulging that one.
No problem. I hope that book was written specifically for the purpose of when the Penguin show comes out, that comic book stores can be like, you love the Penguin show, here's a book for you to read. So the Penguin show is coming out pretty soon. So if you're a store, if you're a fan, if you love that series, this is literally why it was written, so that you could have a badass Penguin like you're going to have in the TV show in the comic. So that's my pitch for that thing. You like the show, buy the comic.
I'm so fucking excited for the Penguin. He's
supposed to be super good.
They're leaning so hard into New Jersey. I love it. It's like, we get it. Batman, what quote unquote is from New Jersey, but the Penguin, you can't deny that after all those things. It's just it's just Batman Sopranos, which is the single greatest phrase that I can mutter. So I'm very excited to see how it goes.
Yeah.
Now, you've also been doing Wonder Woman for quite some time, which is done
and quite some time to go. My comics, because of all the Hollywood stuff, my comics are being pared down. So you'll see a few less series from me. I think that right now I have like 7 series out, but I'm not giving up on Wonder Woman. I'm gonna keep going Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I saw what you said, 100 issues or something.
If they keep selling, Lord knows, who knows what happens.
Yeah. Comics are comics. Now that series, you've introduced Lizzie Prince.
Yes,
which she rules. But as I was preparing, I was thinking about how Lizzie and then her 2 babysitters, Damien and John, are the closest that I have come to getting legacy characters of my own, because I wasn't old enough to be around when Wally took over. Or
that's a good point.
Like Dick, absolutely, but Dick is from so long ago. Like he's not new. Like these 3 are the legacy characters that I'll always be like, oh, they were my characters. How did you look at the other 2 when you were creating her? Like, was there any influence from Damien or John where you're like, well, they're like this, so maybe we have her be a little bit more like her mom to keep the dynamic of a Trinity alive?
Yeah, there was very much like, where can I land her personality so it's not, because those guys are very yin and yang, right? They're very Oscar and Felix. There's one who's kind of neat and stuffy, and there's one who's very arrogant and self-righteous. And so where could I sort of land her that wasn't those 2 things? I mean, before I got to her personality, one thing that we didn't get with either of those 2 characters is we never got a childhood. You know, Damien appeared to us when he was 10, and it was fairly quickly aged up to 13. And Super Sons, he appeared to us when he was 13 and was quickly aged up to 17.
Yeah. And
so we missed years 0 through 10 with Damien, and we missed years 0 through 17, basically. So I very much wanted to do something where we could have a superhero who was with us from day 1 to day 19, which is where she is. So that was part of it. Showing what we missed out on those 2 being aged up so quickly. And then finding her personality. I stole from stuff with the idea that she's like brash and overconfident in a different way than Damien is. She's very verbose. She likes to talk. She's both of those guys in their own ways are very orderly. Damien's very fussy. You know, he wants everything to be in its place, and Superboy's a little bit stuck up, and she's chaos. You know, everything is. She's messy. She's she doesn't clean up. She's so there's that. She takes no guff. So I tried to zag where those 2 zig, so you can get a sort of threesome that can bounce off each other. That's sort of a different kind of way.
Their backups are so good. I just think they have a great dynamic, and it's, again, this show started. We were called Super Sons, so they're 2 of my.
I missed that book. That was great.
Yeah, they're like 2 of my favorite characters. So getting a third who like fits naturally is so nice. There is an issue. Go ahead.
They're wonderful to write. I especially the 2 of them bouncing off each other, and I write them. Look, I love writing comics where everyone gets along, but I write them like the 3 Stooges. They're just fighting all the time, you know. Yeah. And just because those comics are not written for. I wrote comics where people killed themselves on the first panel, and I've written lots of people looking sad out into the rain. Those comics are just made to make you laugh, and they're just silly, and they're my shout out to, you know, Calvin and Hobbes, and Peanuts, and like the sort of strips of my youth that I still think are genius. So yeah, I'm trying to hit a different tone or try making different comics than I did before.
They're just I love the idea of the 3 Stooges, because they don't fight like their parents. They're like siblings. Like they're actually like very nice. Like it's a nice thing to read. It's not hard.
No, they love each other. I all of my children, all 4 of them, 15, 14, and 10, that's the first thing of mine that they read when the new Wonder Woman comes in. And I've ranked, like I said, none of my kids like comics, but those backups are the things are like, let me read that, because they're gag comics. They make you laugh and they make you smile.
Yeah.
And that's the point of them. And my kids love them. So I'll keep doing them because Beleno Tega draws them just absolutely perfectly, just sort of capturing that.
Yes.
She's halfway between sort of Western and Eastern. It's like kind of this very kinetic style, which I love.
Sorry, I just called something. I'm looking at the one I want to talk about, which is issue 11, part 8, with the Black Canary Eras concert. I
never called Eras concert. That's you. I can't be sued.
I did. It's okay. I'm looking at the first page at the Eagle Stadium, Lincoln Financial Field. That's the stadium. Like, it literally says Financial Field right there. Interesting.
Oh,
good for me.
There you go. A little Philly shout out.
Yeah. So, Damien, the crush on Black Canary. Where did that come? Like, I think it's incredible. I love it because it's so funny that he, like, you can see it. He's so nervous. It's great. Where did that come from?
I mean, the first half is me channeling myself. My two youngers are Swifties, like my 10-year-old boy and my 14-year-old girl. They love Taylor Swift. And my oldest is a little snobbier, like, he's like a 15-year-old boy.
Yes.
And so he likes it. He'll be like, yeah, she's very talented, but there's like better people, like, he's like kind of like, he thinks he's very much an expert on things. So I literally just channeled his voice into like pre-Damien. And then I added a little bit of, Bruce Springsteen Dancing in the Dark, the classic sort of pulling Monica out of Courtney Cox out of the crowd, and just turning on his smile. And so the idea that, like, it's almost like a religious conversion where he kind of, you can almost see his puberty kick in one panel, where he's just like, oh,
so fucking good.
And then he becomes a total convert, and he's I think many of us of every gender and persuasion have been there, where something you see when you're, 13, 14, 15 years old, I guess I'm living my life differently now.
My first crush was, I guess I'll say it now, the Pink Power Ranger, when I was a wee lad. Sure. And I interviewed her, and it's very weird.
Oh, wow. Oh,
like,
that's
weird. Was very weird. She was very, I'll tell you about that later, but it was just like, this is weird. Like, this is like like, I'm actually talking to the person who I've been in love with my whole life. So I think those backups are maybe my favorite thing you're doing right now, just because I love a fun, like, trio. I just think they're just the greatest.
We'll collect them soon enough. They're every time it's a week when I'm writing those guys, I'm having a good time. It's very fun.
That's an interesting, doing a collection of just those stories of.
They're doing a collection of just those stories. Yeah, sick. They'll be sort of separate. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
So, also, since we've last spoken, I don't think we talked during Love Everlasting. Maybe I'm very curious how you feel now starting it as a Substack thing. Like, how does it feel sending out like a little bit at a time? Do you think that was, what do you think the reaction was for that versus putting it out in print later?
Mostly, I mean, I feel like I should lie about this, but if I'm totally honest, the Substack didn't affect anything about it. I always sort of looked at it as an image launch, and the Substack was, we Elsa ran the Substack. We fulfilled every single thing. We posted on it as we were going to go into, but it was a big check that allowed me to get a fantastic artist on a book. Like, that's what Substack means to me. That I was able to get Elsa Chartier to do 15 issues on an image book that's about fucking romance comics. That's hard. Good. Yeah, that's hard to do, and I couldn't have done it without that check from Substack. So mostly when I look back, that's what I think. I was like, thank God that happened, because I got 15 issues out of it, and hopefully I can get another 15 out of it sometime in the future to finish the whole story.
I really hope so. Just because romance comics aren't me, like, they're not me. Like, for a long time, we didn't have horror comics. Like, they were there, but like, I feel like when Tynan started like bringing, like going full force, we're flooded with horror. Romance hasn't really had that yet.
No, but Helen's a weird. I mean, Helen is a super weird book. I'm not. It's romance, but it's also horror, but it's also a little bit of. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's the third volume is a Western. Like, it's just, I from the beginning, I was like, this is going to be like my Sandman, where I just explore whatever genre I am, and I'm just using this sort of conceit to do all that stuff. And God bless that book, because now I'm in Hollywood, and people in Hollywood go crazy over it. So it's earned us some. It has paid off. I mean, we say that people don't read romance comics anymore, but whatever. That book, it's going to put some of my kids through college. So God bless it.
Listen, good for them. My last thing I want to talk about is, and again, you mentioned at the beginning, so it's not.
I will say about Love Everlasting. I've said this a lot, and I'm going to keep saying it until someone believes me. The second volume of Love Everlasting, I think, is the best thing I ever wrote, just in terms of just reading it over and being like, the techniques I use and everything sort of landing and it being weird and symbolic and cool. I think that volume 2 is probably the best thing ever. Which is weird, because it's the second volume of a random thing. That's my opinion.
I guess I'll call Steve tomorrow and order the trades so I can read that with that in mind now.
Yeah.
I fucking love it. It was just such an interesting series, but you have done so many things recently. As of yesterday, you did Archie.
I did, yeah. I'm talking a lot about my kids. It's because I'm in Hollywood. I'm too far away.
Listen, that is a part of you. That is a part of your writing. Like, it's huge. Like, I'm very glad you share those types of things, because it gives an insight into your process. But Archie,
I loved it.
You have worked with pretty much every major name in comics art. Like, you have done. You're great. You're a great writer. We both know this, but
never wrote a goddamn page for Mr. Jim Lee, as I remind him constantly.
Really?
No,
wow.
We've been in issues together. Like, I've worked on like anthologies where he did another story in the anthology, but I've never written a panel.
Isn't he like down the street? Can't you just like go to his house? Like, Jim.
I know him. He's a friend of mine. Yeah. Don't think I haven't said. And we're both big, original Star Trek fan. We're both Legion of Superheroes fans. We're both, I was like, we have stuff in common.
A Star Trek book. You're still exclusive DC, right? Other than Creator Engine.
Interesting. That's why his name is Jim Lee. He named himself after Jim Cook. That's some Jim Lee trivia for you.
Oh, yeah. I would love to see Jim Lee do another series, but he's kind of a big deal.
He's the best. Like Black Canary, he's the best of the best.
Yeah, he's one I would love to talk to, but he's like too high for me to get from anybody. Now,
I see that. It's fine.
Well, listen. I had to get you.
Just got slammed, guys.
Listen,
yeah, it is.
It's fine. The Tom King, the Biggest Loser. It's fine.
That's true. That's right. I'm the biggest loser. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. No, I'm at the level. Yeah.
But you've done books. You've done art. You've done your art, if that's what you're gonna call it.
Yeah,
your partners are always some of the most talented, incredible people, and Dan Parent is also one of those. But his style is very, very different from what we see in modern comics. What was it like for you to get those pages back, to have that like classic Archie feel?
Wonderful. Perfect. Every time I got a page, I got incredibly excited, and I texted my wife, and I felt like I was a kid. I'm not saying a lot of comic book people are like the best day of your life is when you get new art in, but like every day of my life, I read so many books, I get new art in, and yeah. I mean, right now I'm working with Bilkis on Helen. I think that's the most beautiful art in comics, in my own personal opinion. And I've worked with Smallwood when he was doing the most beautiful art in comics. So, but there's just something so magical about what Dan does. It just felt like I was suddenly part of an 80-year comic history that goes unsung but is incredibly influential. Yeah. And it was very meaningful for me to get those pages in actually. And he drew my kids in, so that was crazy. But,
did your kids find this separate of you, Archie? I'm just curious. Like, Archie is still big, and Archie has an incredible horror line. Their editors are also some of the nicest people. Very lucky to have gotten to read a lot of Archie because of them. But what got your crowd into it? Was it the show? Like, what gets people into Archie now?
For my kids, my kids who love comedy comics.
Mm-hmm.
They love reading, Calvin Hobbes or Zitz, or we read the Sunday Funnies together. I get a paper every day. They read like just like I did when I was a kid. They read comic strips. And so my kids and I would always go to Barnes and Noble, the Words Book kind of people. And Barnes & Noble has these, Archies that cost like they're pretty cheap, and you get a whole story. And since they were little kids, you go to the bookstore, I buy a book, they buy a book, and they're like, "What's?" They immediately So I started buying these Archies. I didn't grow up on Archie. It was kind of, I liked it and knew about it, but I didn't read it religiously. And my kids got so into it, and they just were like more and more Archie. And I'm a guy who will always buy a kid a comic book. That's kind of for, maybe because that's what I do for a living.
Yeah. So
I started buying them more and more Archie. They kept reading. And then, so in my house was just stacked with Archies. They just couldn't get enough of it. And so eventually I was at the Eisners, I think a year ago. And I was talking to the guy. I was at a con, and I walked by Dan Parent, and I knew Dan, because my kids were so into it, I tried to get into it too. So I knew all the great artists and stuff. And I was like, Dan Parent's fucking legend. So I walked up to him, I introduced myself. I said, I would love to do a story with you. And he'd heard of me, thank God. He's like, I'd love to do it with you too. And the Eisners, I ran into the editor of Archie, and I literally like in a hallway, like I would walk by, I was like, I know. So I dragged him. I was like, I don't know if you know, I'm Tom King. I think I had just won 2 Eisners. So I had Eisners in my hand. I'm Tom King. I just won these. And can I do a story with you? I've already talked to Dan. He's willing to draw it. And he's like, yeah. So then I had to ask DC because I'm not exclusive. And then they let me, because I wanted to honestly just impress my children. And and then, then I was like, okay, kids, I gotta write. And I'm a kind of research kind of person. So I was like, I just, took months of my life and read every Archie I could get my hands on until I kind of had the patterns, and I saw what the difference between a Harry Lucy and a Dan DeCarlo and a Sam Schwartz and a Frank Doyle and a Tom DeFalco and Norm Brayfogle and all the great talents that have worked on it. And then I got to do my one little gag issue where all I wanted to do, I didn't want to do anything deep. I didn't want to deconstruct. I just wanted to do a gag comic, just a classic 60s gag comic, which is just, it's silly and stupid, and I love it.
I was so excited to open it. It was like, I was like, am I going to open this? It's going to be like a very like deep thing, but it was so much fun. It's like classic Archie. You did a good job. Now,
that's all I wanted to do was bring out the classic Archie. Yeah.
My opinion doesn't matter. What was your children's review? Did they like it?
Yes, all of them liked it. So my kids, I wrote it in, there's a classic Archie style. Most Archies are done in 5 pages, where in the first page is a splash followed by 2 small panels, and every other page is 6 panels. That's how Archie were written for like 30 years, from like 1945 to 1970, probably till 1985. So I wrote it in that style, the classic sort of Archie style. So it's kind of, it's 20 pages, so 4 or 5 page gag comics. And then I gave the last splash, and Archie was like, "Oh, we'll put you in the comic. We'll put your kids in the comic," because they knew my kids were fans. I was like, "Great!" So they put my kids in one of the splashes, and so mostly they're like turned to that page to see how they looked in the comic. That's awesome. And to see who had what line. Like because of the way the lettering worked, my oldest son doesn't have a line. He's like, "How come I don't have a line?" I was like, "That's okay." And Dan, I sent pictures to Dan. Even my dog is like a little in the corner in the background. You can see Roxy.
Really.
And so mostly they were concerned about that. But my youngest, who's the biggest Archie fan, was reading. When he hit the Sabrina page, for some reason, it hit him really hard, and he was laughing hysterically. And I was like, "What are you laughing?" I was like, "Ah, this is Sabrina." So they liked it. But they knew, like, as I was writing it, I would go to the dinner table and I'd be like, "These are the gags I wrote. Do these work?" Like I would crowdsource it, so they knew every joke that was coming.
That's awesome. That makes the issue even better, knowing that like everything is involved. Now I have to find Roxy. What you said she was on the Splash?
About the last Splash when the two kids are talking and they name every single person, like just for a crowd of people, and there's a big bubble with everyone's name in it, and there's 3 kids, and Roxy's in the foreground with her like her little face going over the panel. You can see her.
Oh yeah. Your children are in it.
There's my 3 kids. They're Charlie and Crosby. The 3 C's.
That's so nice. Tom, thank you for being here. I'm always so happy to talk with you. One day, you and I will finally have our Columbo episode. I'm saving it for you. So whenever you want to talk Columbo, you're the expert.
I have to write for an upcoming Wonder Woman issue. We're doing some Detective Chimp stuff, and I'm going to do Detective Chimp as Columbo, just between you and me. So there's some Columbo content coming in Wonder Woman.
If it's between you and I'll black that out.
No. You can let it go out. That's all right.
Perfect.
Let the world know that I'm stealing from the best.
So I've never watched it. I'm not going to watch it until we commit. Okay. Like I want to come in fresh after watching it for the first. And for some reason, it's just gotten super popular recently, and I'm just like, Mr. Hollywood out there.
Because it's good.
It always looks great. So. When is Black Canary hitting shelves?
The order cutoff, it hit shelves around Thanksgiving, the end of November. But the order cutoff for telling is election day, basically. So before election day, because it's going to be hard for me to pierce any sort of media around election day. Yeah. So now is your chance to just tell your story. You want Black Canary, please. I guarantee you, it's as pretty as Human Target. It's as well written as Supergirl. It'll make you cry, and it's as as badass as Batman. It's fucking cool. So please, if I had to push one book, push this book. Get this one. It's going to be the one everybody's talking about.
I'm so excited to read it. Other than that, please pick up Love Everlasting so we can get more of that and all of Tom's other books. Tom and I, same comic book shop, Third Eye, as we've talked about on the show many, many times. If you don't have a local comic book shop, just go to their site. You can order to your house. You can call. You can do anything you need. They're the best there is.
Third Eye will have shortly. This has not been announced yet, but what the heck? Third Eye will have shortly a bunch of signed. I just did a huge signing of comics. So if you want to sign Tom King comic, Third Eye will have it for you.
Good to know. Did you just go to the shop and just sit and?
No, I did. I had a lot of comics. I took 13 short boxes of Tom King signed comics.
Wow.
It was a week of. It was my wrist was hurting at the end of it. But they're all signed.
Yeah, I assume. Yeah, my favorite story is my brother texting me, hey, Tom King's going to write a Rorschach book. And I was like, Jake, what the fuck are you on about? And he was like, I'm in the store right now, and Tom is buying all of Watchmen's stuff. I am telling you, there is a Rorschach book coming. And this is before it was announced or anything like that. And I was like, all right. It was like you had just gone to the store and just bought a bunch of them. And he was like, yeah, I'm standing next to him and he's buying all this. And I was like, oh, all right. So
yeah, usually Steve, who runs Third Eye, knows what I'm writing before I'm writing it because it's what I buy at the counter.
He's the one who made me what I am, a diehard Garth Ennis fan.
Awesome. I just read a volume of Hitman this last weekend. And I was like, man, it's so good.
You should watch Kite Man if you haven't seen any of the episodes yet. Because
Kite Man. You mean the show that's named after my catchphrase?
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, wait, maybe someone knows Kite Man. The amount of Ennis that is in that show blew my mind. I was like, I'm glad that Tom made this character popular, but who the fuck was like, yeah, let's get Garth Ennis characters in this? Because Six Pack is in it. And I was like, holy shit. It's the best day ever. Tom, always a pleasure talking to you. Is there anything else for people to buy?
No. Just go into your local comic book store and have a good time. And I just want to say thank you to your listeners. Thank you for doing this and spreading the word on comics. I greatly appreciate it, man. It means the world.
Always a pleasure.
Just to keep the